Hi there, this is Heather of Shutterbug 101. Today we'll be going over the Fujifilm X-100F. Let's get started. The Fujifilm X-100F, or the X-100 is a rangefinder camera with a classic look built for street photography. The X100 series, including the discontinued models X100 Original, X100S for second, X100T for third, and the current model Fujifilm sells today, that we're doing a walkthrough of, all have the inability to change lenses, which simply means the only lens choice you have is a 23mm f2. The X100F is a 24 megapixel crop sensor camera, has 325 focus points, has a fixed 3-inch LCD screen, and shoots at 8 frames per second continuous drive. Today we will be going through the doors, buttons, and menus to help you get to know this camera a little better. So, going over this camera, first thing I want to start with is that this lens cap is pretty darn cool. It is metal alongside the body here, so it makes it really durable. It's very classy. So you just slip it over the top of the lens when you're not using it. So I really like that lens cap design. Going over the front of the camera, again, I do want to remind you that this lens is not removable. It is built onto the camera. And because this is a crop sensor camera, even though this is a 23mm lens, it's actually an equivalent to 35mm. So if you have done film photography in the past, where you had that 35mm equivalent, this is going to get you that same feel. The whole design of this camera was to, get you back in those kind of roots, if you wanted to kind of have some nostalgia feel when it comes to film, if you don't currently shoot it. Alongside their film simulations, which are built into the camera, which we will go over here in a little bit. On the lens itself, there is a control ring, which you can program to do different things if you don't want to use it for manual focusing. We have our aperture ring, which of course, as you can see here, it has a red A, which just stands for auto. You're letting the camera determine the aperture. Otherwise, you can do f16 all the way to f2, which is nice and wide open. Now do notice that alongside with there being an auto in the aperture ring, on the top here where our shutter speeds are, you also have an A for auto. And then of course when you lift this ring here and turn, these are going to be your ISOs, which of course also have an A as well. So if you have your shutter speed, your ISO, and your aperture all on that red A, you're essentially in auto mode. So it's a bit of a different layout than your typical camera. If you switch anything on your aperture, you'd be considered in aperture mode. If you change your shutter speed and leave the others on auto, you're essentially in your shutter speed mode. If you change all of them off of A, you're essentially in full manual mode. So it is a little bit different than, your everyday camera like Canon, Nikon, Sony even. But a lot of people tend to embrace this a little better because it's very laid out on the camera. It can be easy to understand once you know what these things do. Continuing with the front of the camera here, we do have this little switch here, which what this does is inside the viewfinder, which you look at back here, you can change that to either a optical viewfinder, which you're seeing straight through the camera like old film days, or if you hit this switch to the left, I believe it is, you can put that as an electronic viewfinder. If you put it to the right, I believe that's going to bring up a little box in the corner to indicate how sharp it is, if it's indeed in focus, if you want to focus on your own, which brings up this switch here on the side. This is going to be your focusing mode. M, of course, is going to be manual focus. S is going to be autofocus single, which is for static objects. It's going to be for things that are not moving, so your camera will just focus and remain still on that. And then you have AFC, which is autofocus continuous, which is going to allow the camera to focus as the subject moves in the frame, so something to keep in mind there. Going to this side of the camera here, you can see that we have a little door. Inside this door is going to be our mic or remote. Port. So if you're doing any video, you can plug a external mic in, which you can mount the hot shoe on top. Or if you're using a shutter release that's corded, you would plug it in this port as well, so it's kind of a double feature. You have your HDMI port to connect this to a television set to show pictures for a slideshow, something like that. And then we have our USB port here, which can be used to either charge the battery or transfer pictures onto a computer. And then that just closes in place. On the bottom of the camera here, we can see that we have our universal screw mount for our tripods. And then we have our door here, which has our battery and our memory card. Of course, do keep in mind that the memory card is spring-loaded, so you want to make sure that you push down before you start pulling it out. And then the battery here, of course, has this little button here that has that ability to release the battery. Going to the top of the camera, this is where we're going to see our model here, the Fujifilm X-100F, the latest in its line. Then we have the hot shoe here, which can hold a microphone. This can be used for an external flash. It does have a built-in flash available, but you know, unfortunately built-in flashes are not always the best. They're there for you if you're, stuck in a situation where you absolutely need some extra light, but I always recommend using a off-camera flash with a diffuser. This, of course, is going to control our shutter speed here. And like I said here, if you pull up on this ring around the shutter speed, that will allow you to change the ISO. We have our on and off switch here. And our shutter button, so if you push halfway down, that's going to focus. You push all the way down to take a picture. We have our function button here, which you can program your function button and also these lower buttons here to be what you want them to be. At the moment, upon factory, the function button up on top is going to control your metering. So the multimeter is considering light from the entire area. Center weighted, of course, is taking from whatever's in the center, and then you have like your spot metering, which you can pick a specific area in the frame to take the light from accordingly, or just kind of an overall average. And then, of course, the last dial up on top here is going to be our exposure dial. So if we were to go plus, it's going to make it brighter. If we go minus, it's going to make it darker. So it's just an easy way to give yourself a little bit more light or a little bit less light without changing any major settings there. Going to the back of the camera where a lot of the action is here. Of course, we've kind of gone over our viewfinder. This is our diopter. Naturally, my eyes aren't the same as yours. So if you look through this and the numbers seem a little blurry, you can adjust this to your eyesight, and then you should never have to change it again. This, of course, is a sensor here, so if you bring your face up to the sensor, you'll start to see an electronic view through the viewfinder if you choose to have that, and it will turn off the screen. You can change your view mode accordingly if you want to turn the screen off versus it being able to just be the screen or both. We have our auto exposure or auto focus lock. This will allow you to hit this button. At the moment it's shining a light because I have it face down. But it'll actually do a auto exposure, auto focus lock when you hit this button. Locking in the autofocus or locking in the light. We have a adjustment knob here which will assist us in choosing things in our menu. Which we'll go over here in a moment. We have Q for quick menu. this allows you to make any quick adjustments here. So here on top is just kind of your select settings. You can actually make custom settings if you wanted to for certain situations. Then we have our autofocus mode, so if you want it to be a wide area, center area, or a specific spot of an area that you want to focus on. You control your dynamic range. You can control your white balance, your color temperature, so if you want it warmer, cooler. Most of the time on auto, the camera is really good at determining what should be white, so I wouldn't worry too much about that unless you want to get creative. We have noise reduction, which if you're shooting in RAW like I am, you'll probably want to keep this at 0 and adjust that in editing. We have image size. Because I'm shooting on RAW, it's not going to let me change anything. Image quality, you can do RAW normal, RAW fine, do JPEG normal or fine accordingly. But I like shooting in RAW because I like editing my things in Lightroom. Your film simulation, kind of what I went through earlier. So you have sepia, Velvia, you have monochrome, you have Artista. You have a bunch of different film options here. On this quick menu here, it's hard to tell right off the bat if you're just starting out with this camera which film modes are which because they're abbreviated. So what I like to do is if you push to the left here, it's actually going to show you on the screen Provia, that's standard. You have Velvia, Vivid, Artista Soft, Classic Chrome. You've got Acros, Monochrome, Sepia, and it's going to show you how it looks on the screen as you're going through there. And then you can actually pick filters, so green filter, red filter, yellow filter, because those are all going to give you different contrast points overall when using this. So if you want to do more with the film modes, push to the right, and that should be able to get you started there. Going over the rest of the quick menu here, we have, you can adjust sharpness, color, shadow tones, and highlight tones. Again, I edit all my stuff in Lightroom. It's much easier to do that in Lightroom, but I find that some people that like to shoot street photography or even landscapes with this camera may want to do some fine-tuning while they're out there and get it done the first time, which is fine. You're welcome to do that. You have a self-timer, face and eye detection setting, which is fantastic, your flash function setting, and then your LCD brightness as well. So all these can be controlled just by this one quick menu button. And of course your universal escape button is going to be your shutter button halfway down to get you right back to taking pictures. We have our joystick here, which will allow us to move our focus point wherever we would like it to be. And then we have our playback button, which of course is going to show us pictures that we've taken, and the trash can button, which will allow us to throw away pictures that we don't want. Our display or back button, so if we're on our shooting menu, our display button is going to change how we look at this rear screen here. If you're in your menu, you can actually press this button to go back, so it's kind of a dual purpose button there. If you push up where it says drive, this is going to change your drive mode. So you have still image, you have continuous shots, which can do anything from 3 frames to 8 frames per second. You have your bracketing, we have panoramic, we have advanced filters, and then all the way here at the bottom, you actually have a movie mode. So when I was first playing with this camera, I was really thrown off because I'm like, wait a minute, this camera doesn't have any video features, because usually you see a red button or something that indicates this is what you press to start recording. This camera does not have that. So what you do is you push up on the drive button and then you go down to movie mode, and then when you are ready to start a video, you're just going to click your shutter button one time to start recording, again to stop recording. So it's, for me it's a little tedious, but this camera wasn't like this is a great video camera. I mean, it just does 1080p HD video. So it's nothing super fancy, but it does indeed have a video feature. It's just a little unorthodox to get to. If you push to the right, this is going to give you more white balance options. If you push down, this is going to be more autofocus modes, very similar to your quick menu here. And then we're going to go ahead and get into the menu. So starting up at the top, our IQ menu is going to be our image quality. So a lot of these settings here are covered in the quick menu, ones that you would usually change. So some of these I'm just going to skip over. You know, film simulation. If you want a grain effect, very similar to how you would see it on film, you can add that in there as well. You know, again, shadow, tone, color, sharpness, noise reduction, we all kind of went over those. Color space, you want to keep on sRGB. You have pixel mapping here. Select custom settings, edit, save custom settings. So that's going to be that base or C1 through C7 that we went through in the quick menu. We have our autofocus manual focus settings, so to change the area or the mode. Number of autofocus points you want to work with. Pre-autofocus or autofocus illuminator, that was that light that you saw come on earlier when I had it against my mat, so it was turning that on because it was like, I need to shine a light to be able to see what I need to focus on. Face and eye detection, if you're taking pictures of people, that's always handy to have. Autofocus manual focus. Manual focus assist, where it'll show you in that bottom corner there the zoom portion to see what you're pointed at is indeed in focus. You have like instant autofocus settings, which of course is going to be that switch up front. Depth of field. Then we have our shooting settings, which again, self timer, which we've kind of gone through. It has an interval timer shooting. Film simulation bracketing, which is kind of neat. So if you just want to see what the film simulations do, you can have it bracket in, you know, almost all of them. And you can see how the scene looks with all of those and kind of decide on your favorite. We have our metering system, our shutter type, our ISO settings, ND filter, which is built in. Wireless communication, so if you wanted to connect this to your cell phone to transfer images, I believe you can use your phone as a remote control with this as well. You have your flash settings, which you have like the red eye removal tool on there in case you are taking pictures of people with that built-in flash, if you want the built-in flash on. Your movie settings, so if you want, you know, how many frames per second. Your autofocus modes for that, the HDMI output display, and then we have like general setup, which is going to be like your user settings, your sound setups, your screen setups, your button and dials, all of your really like custom stuff to how you want the camera to function. Power management, connection setting, and then you have a My Menu setting down here as well, which you can save things to. If you don't feel like, you know, if it's not available in your quick menu, but you don't want to have to dig through all these, which, you know, this is probably one of the more simpler menus that I've ever gone over when it comes to cameras. So really nothing too much to worry about. The thing about this camera, it's a great camera. It's a great walk around camera. It's fantastic for when you love going to the city and you love capturing landscapes and you're not worried about lenses and you don't use a zoom. You just want to capture things fairly close to how your eye is going to see, but just in a more creative standpoint. This is essentially just a tool to help you capture what you see on a daily basis that inspires you or that you want to share with other people. You can add texture to and feeling and you know, that sort of thing that we used to get with film. And you know, although it's not film, you know, and it's arguably so, you know, it's not going to have the same exact look. Fujifilm has done an excellent job to get really close. and you get those pictures instantly. So it's a great camera to carry around. It's really durable. It's got a classic look, so it comes in black, or it comes in black and silver as well. If you guys have any questions on this camera, please give me a shout out in the comments below. I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as I can. If you have other cameras that you would like me to go over, maybe lens comparisons or other tips and tricks, also let me know in the comments below. Until next time, keep your eye out for inspiration, Shutterbugs. Bye.